So the third one was, where was it? Sorry.
Was the Yangtze River in China.
Okay.
So there's the third longest river in the world after the Nile and the Amazon.
Okay. And how far is it? How long did you do?
It's 4,000 miles.
What did you do? How did you traverse it?
Again, hiking.
4,000 miles?
4,000 miles walking.
And how long did it take you?
That's like from here to America, so you could walk over the Atlantic, right?
Yeah. And so that was, so you've got the source of the Yangtze in the Tibetan Plateau at 5,100 meters, which is similar to Mount Everest Base Camp.
Sounds great, Tibetan Plateau.
Yeah, it was great up there, stunning, really wild. If you want to know what the world looked like thousands of years ago, I reckon Tibet and Mongolia are those places.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, just like no one for days, you know?
Really?
Yeah.
You can actually go there and there's just been nobody there?
No one.
That must have been so good.
Yeah.
The altitude must have really affected you as well.
The altitude, fucked everyone up.
Yeah. Just breathing less. Less oxygen.
We lost 4 members before we even got to the start point. They had to abandon the trip, altitude sickness, fear of wildlife, injury. And then after, how long was it? I'm sure it was after the first month or 2, maybe it was 6 weeks, I'd lost 10 members of the 16 different members that joined me at different areas. Like
There's just 2 left now.
You lost them to death or to lost them to
No, I didn't. Yeah, sorry, no. No. You're right. And if they stayed with me, they could have potentially died.
Right. Wow.
But I bought a Tibetan guy who was good at altitude, and I brought him with me, especially for the source, because if I got altitude sickness, I've got someone to get me off the mountains. He got altitude sickness. I had to get him off the mountains.
Wow.
And then my film crew left, and they've ditched this donkey with us. So we've got this donkey. We decided to put our rucksacks onto the donkey. We're walking 2.5 weeks once my guide had recovered with altitude sickness, with this donkey sort of through the wilderness of Tibet, pulled in by the police 5 different occasions because it was like, what the fuck are you doing here? And this is where it took critical planning. This took 2 years to plan. We needed, I don't know if I should say all of this, but we needed 14 different signed and stamped documents. They needed to make me temporary doctor for a year. I needed to become ambassador for one of the organizations, which then granted me access to the Three Sources National Park. We then worked with the government to be able to carry all of this satellite technology. Because I was carrying literal beacon systems that I would point to the sky and then boom, I've got internet and satellite phone, which is illegal, but the government approved it. Right. And so these Tibetan officers would pull us in, leave the horse in the tent there, rock up at 3-4 o'clock in the morning, just because that's how long it would take for them to get to us from when a local had reported us to the police. And they would drive us 5-6 hours back to their sort of government officers and question us. And we'd have these documents and they'd be like, why have you got satellite? What are you doing here?
Yeah.
Some sort of spy or something.
Yeah. And the first time I was pulled in, I remember they threatened me with deportation. I was like, you've got, after 2 years planning, and already they're like, we're going to deport you. And it's like, it's day number 3. I still got, 3
Did someone prepare you for that and say you will be stopped?
Yeah, they did. Yeah. A bit too much. My parents were really worried with this one. Because you do hear of people just go missing,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. How many of you were there then? So it was just me attempting the record. Right.
And so as part of that, we were filming for National Geographic. So I needed film crew to fly in at different locations.
Right.
So at the beginning, there was 4 of us, but we didn't make it to the source. And so I had to go back to a nearby city. The guys recovered and I got a stronger team sent out. And then there was 3 of us with a donkey. We walked for 2.5 weeks, and then there were different people along the first sort of 6 weeks that joined. But they would be flying in, and they were coming straight up to altitude. They weren't sort of working themselves up. Right. So they would be strapped to this big tank, oxygen tank in hospital. And it's a case of, look, you need to go home.
So how high? What was the altitude? Do you know what it was in feet or meters?
It was just over 5,100 meters, which is over 15,000 feet.
Right. Okay. So we're not comparative now to a ski slope, right? Which is a few thousand. So that's really high. Obviously, lack of oxygen there is a lot, and you're doing a lot of exercise as well.
Were you the only one that did it as well? Were you the only one that completed it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you take oxygen when you were there, or would you take elevation tablets?
No, I would have if I needed to.
Yeah.
But I felt my body was just adjusting quite nicely because I was sort of organically going higher and higher, rather than these guys who would fly from Beijing, straight there. And done. You're done.
Wow.
Mate, you've walked 4,000. That's just incredible.
It was crazy,
and it took you 300. How many days?
It took 352, but
so it took you a year.
I could have done it a lot quicker.